Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Aquarium Radio at aquariumradio.com. And I'm your host, Janet Carolesson, and today I have 2 co-hosts, Reverend John Polk and Neal Vanderstelt. And I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correct, Neal, but when I get you, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And our very special guest today is an experiencer, Byron W. Lacy. And Reverend Polk, John, is going to come on and tell us about Mr. Lacy. John, are you there? Oh, 1 second.
Yes.
Yeah, you're on live. Okay, you're live. Okay, go ahead.
Byron's first contact with aliens, age 5. Monthly contacts, 60-plus years. Communication with them, 4 times remembered. An alien saved him from death 8 times. His first contact with aliens was in 1955 at age 5, but the significance was not understood until 2009 when a stargate opened up in front of him at a traffic light. A friend urged him to look into alien abductions, and what he discovered changed his life forever. During the first contact at age 5, Byron was confronted with little men in his room 3 consecutive nights. Each time he called his mom, and then they were gone when she arrived. She soon grew irritated with his calling. She never said that they didn't exist. Instead, she said, "You're going to have to deal with them yourself," leaving him feeling abandoned and eventually alienated from his entire family. Because he could not talk about this event, he became disconnected from his life story. It became like a myth, which he could never explain to himself nor forget. These events have continued monthly for 60 years. And that's Byron W. Lacy's bio.
Okay. And welcome back to the show, Reverend Polk. How's your week been? Pretty good?
Yeah, it's been really good. Sold a number of books, and I've been aggressively trying to get on a number of shows, and that's translating for me also. So things have been good. And Mom's driving into town probably here in about an hour and a half. So everything's good.
Wow. Everything's good. Well, we'll have to have you back on the show talking about your book. We're going to bring on Neal Vanderstelt. Hold on while I click his button. Hi, Neal. Welcome to Aquarium Radio, to Experiencers Network.
Hello.
Thanks for coming back.
How is everyone? Thank you.
Oh, we are doing great. I'm here in Maui, Hawaii, and the weather is perfect. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but I just love living in the islands.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I have friends from Hawaii on Facebook, but I've never met them face-to-face per se. But I'm over here in Tucson, Arizona, and the weather is pretty good. It's quite windy and sunny, and I'm having a pretty good day so far.
So, since this is your first time as one of our co-hosts, can you tell our listeners a little bit, like an abbreviated bio? And everybody, I do have a bio on Aquarium Radio for everybody, for Byron, for Neal, and for John. About all these incredible people on this panel today, just go look on aquariumradio.com and go into the search engine. But Neal, give us a little story about who are you?
Okay, well, I'll just go with the paranormal stuff here and tell you how I got into this. Back in the 90s, I was pretty much a nobody. I'm 46 years old now, and some friends asked if we would go outside and look up in the sky. So we all went outside and we're looking up, and we saw a pulsating object in the air, and it was pulsating to twice its normal size. And I tried to explain there were younger people there that were, I think we were like 21, and there were younger people there. There were probably like, I would say about 14 years old. And I tried to explain for the life of me that it was something conventional, because I had pretty much been born on an airport. My father ran Vans Aviation after the last name Vanderstelt, and that's on Reed Hillview Airport. Doesn't exist anymore, but back then it did. And I had seen many conventional aircraft, and I just figured, it was something explainable like a blimp. But as it got closer, I could tell this was something that I'd never seen before, and I didn't believe in UFOs back then. And the object got right over our head, and we were sitting there looking up at the object, and it dropped a piece of molten lava from it. Is how the only way I could describe it. It was a fiery object dripped from it. I know. And I thought, after researching it and looking back at the event, that it must have been some type of nuclear event that happened there, nuclear power. And all of a sudden, it started gaining altitude, and then at the snap of a finger, I hate to use this term because it's science fiction, but it warped into deep space and just shot right through the atmosphere. And then after that, I had trouble explaining to people what I saw. Everyone thought I was nuts, and, I had other witnesses and everything else. And then I started having dreams, and, I seen like aliens in my dreams, and they were connected to my father. My father worked for a NASA project later on in life, but not at that time. And if people want to look that up, it has to do with the smart plug. If you Google smart plug and my dad's name, Charles Vanderstelt, he made the first plane fly without magnetos, but he did not get credit. But there is an article by the Daily Bee on that. And after that event happened in California, I moved to Arizona, and the object followed me there and was accompanied by military Chinook helicopters the second time that I saw it, and the Chinook helicopters had their lights off. And it began a long, a daily day. I was harassed daily by the military. Basically, they would interrupt my sleep patterns, and I don't know if it was the UFOs or not, but the military was definitely present, and they would harass me on a daily basis, basically. I felt that it was harassment. I don't know if they're watching over me, but to me it was harassment.
Wow, fascinating. Well, we'll have to go into that more somewhere in time. Maybe later on the show we can compare notes. Now to Byron Lacy, and I'm just clicking him on. Okay, go ahead, Byron. Aloha. Welcome to the show.
How are you doing tonight?
We're all doing great, apparently. How are you doing, Mr. Lacy?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Excellent. Where are you? What part of the country are you in, or the world?
I am in East Texas, out in the woods.
Wow. And what's that like? What's the weather like there for you?
Right now it's about 62, and it was clear all day, and they didn't spray any chemtrails, so it should be clear tomorrow.
That's always a good sign when they don't spray the chemtrail.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, how about we start with your story? I put a page up on aquariumradio.com, and Byron has quite a story. I'll say, one or two or 3 points and then pause and see if we have... Probably going to be saying, hey, we want to talk about that, address that. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
You disappeared for just a minute.
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing. It's been cutting out on your end.
Okay, I'm going to switch to another headphone while you go ahead, Byron, and start telling your story. Go, take it away.
Well, I was first visited by the aliens in 1955 in my bedroom, as you've already heard. And so after that, for years, really strange things would happen to me. Like one of you said, my life has been saved 8 different times. And all the time, I thought that it was probably spirit guides or guardian angels. I didn't have the slightest idea that it was aliens. And I'd like to go into one of the stories of where my life was saved. I was in college, my sophomore year at Henderson County Junior College in Athens, Texas. We had a pep rally, and I was in the band, and we had a cannon that they would fire off after each pep rally, and this was homecoming. Well, we had done all our playing, the cheerleaders had led all their cheers, and everybody was just sort of standing around talking, and a boy came up and started talking to me. I had met him once or twice, but I'd never really had a conversation with him, so we're having this conversation, and suddenly somebody taps me on the left shoulder, and I turn to look at him, and I'm wondering what the heck he's doing, because I've never met him before. I thought it was sort of rude of him to interrupt a conversation when I didn't even know him. And the minute that happened, before I could say anything, the cannon went off, and I felt a gust of wind go across my back at the base of my spine, and I saw the boy I'd been talking to crumble to the ground, and a huge crowd of people gathered around him. I turned back around to say something to the person who I was talking to, and he wasn't there. He was gone. I couldn't see him anywhere. I had never seen him before, and Henderson County Junior College was a small enough college that you might not know everybody's name, but you would have seen them, especially after a month or two at school. Never saw him again. And what had happened was the guys working the cannon had got overzealous because it was homecoming, and they had put a double load of powder and a double load of wadding in the cannon, and it had blown up the back end of the cannon and sent shrapnel into 3 different buildings, knocking bricks out of them, and a piece of iron about the size of a hardball into this guy close to his hip in the front. If I had been standing in front of him where I was before, it would have hit me in the base of the spine, and I would have either been paralyzed or dead. He was in the hospital for over 6 months. The injury was that bad. So I was very lucky that some stranger out of nowhere had tapped me on the shoulder.
Wow. So he basically took the hit for you, in other words.
Yeah, the other guy did. So, yeah, and people have said they thought it was guardian angels or God or someone that did that, and I'm going, if God could do that, why would he let this other person get hurt? Because I didn't know the guy very well, but he was a really nice person. So I just never could accept that it was guardian angels. And in 2009, I had a pivotal event, and I'll go ahead and talk about it. You've already read part of it. I was at a stoplight in Nacogdoches where I live, and a disc about the size of a dinner plate suddenly appeared at the end of the stoplight over the turn lane, and it quickly expanded to over 6 feet across and 6 feet up and down. And it looked just like the Stargate in the movie Stargate with Kurt Russell, except it did not have a frame around it. And I was really confused. I looked at it, I closed my eyes, and it disappeared. It wasn't in my head. I looked at it again and moved my head from side to side, and it didn't move. So I was pretty secure thinking that it was out there and not inside of my head. And I looked around at all the cars, and nobody was paying any attention. Then the Stargate exploded without any noise. It exploded into the air, and it all disappeared about 4 foot from the ground. Well, I drove on home, and I have this friend that I call Frank in the book, and he's investigated or researched UFOs, aliens, the Bilderbergs, all that stuff for years. And he's told me some of the stuff, but I really wasn't all that interested in it. Well, I told him what had happened, and he said he didn't say anything at all. And I thought, maybe I'm schizophrenic or something if he's not saying anything, because he always had something to say. Then a week later, I'm at the same stoplight on the same day and pretty close to the same time, and it happens again. And I went through the whole routine of checking to see if it was in my head or not, and it wasn't. Then I didn't call him, but the next day we were going to walk at the creek because we'd walk 3.5 miles every day just to stay healthy. So I told him it happened again. He didn't say anything. Well, this was beginning to drive me nuts. So when we got back to his house, before I left, I said, hey, what do you think that was? What do you think's going on? And he said, you really want to know? And I said, well, yeah, I really want to know. And he said, I think you're an alien abductee. And I said, you're crazy. He turned around and he wrote down 4 or 5. It was really nice to have it dumped on me, just bam. He wrote down 4 or 5 web addresses, and he said, you need to look at these. So I folded up the paper, and I got home. I pulled the paper out, and I tossed it on the table next to my computer, and I went and watched TV. The next day, he asked me if I'd looked up those web pages, and I said, no, I've been busy. I'll do it later. That went on for 3 or 4 days. Finally, when I got home, because he had said, man, you really need to look at these web pages. When I got home, I decided to do it. There wasn't anything on TV I wanted to watch, and I felt okay about doing it at that point. Well, there were all of the pages, 3 or 4 of them, had questions on them. That if you answered a certain number of them, it was quite probable that you were abducted by aliens. Well, I got 95% of them yes.
Wow.
So, and that happened time and time again, and some of them had different questions.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 936553230 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hold on, people. I don't know why it's calling John. Did John drop?
I thought I got dropped.
No, I'm here.
Who's
I've been here the whole
on?
time.
Okay, so Byron, did you get dropped? Okay, it looks like Byron got dropped. Hold on while I call him back. That's weird. Okay.
Byron, you could hear me, right?
Byron, are you still there? No, it said Byron has been dropped. So let me call him back. Wow. Okay, here he is.
So.
Hi, Byron. Are you back? Sorry, you got dropped.
Yes.
I got dropped earlier, so I'm keeping an eye on it. If you suddenly disappear, I'll call you back in, or just call back into the show. All right, Byron.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We're having some difficulties, but continue.
You never know. So,
can I ask you something?
Sure.
Do you have any scars that you just can't explain or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've got 3 scoop marks on my. Well, I didn't know they were scoop marks, but I've got 3 scoop marks on my left leg, 2 on one side, 1 on the other. I've got these little. It's as if someone laid 3 grains of rice in a row, equally separated, on my upper leg on my left, and tanned me, although I'm not tan, but they're lighter than the rest of my skin. I have a place on my ankle that will not tan, and at a HUFON meeting, Houston UFO Network, with Daryl Sims one time. He had a doctor come in, and the doctor said, I don't know what it is, but it has to be a scar. He said only a scar or that area being removed would keep it from tanning. He said, but it doesn't look like a scar. So, and then, of course, those are permanent. Those are there all the time. I have marks at least once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 bruises, scratches, or actually they're long lines of punctures. And the other day I measured one of those punctures, and I found out that they use the metric system because the measurements came out odd if I used inches, but if I used a caliper, it was 3 large dots. Both of them were 14 inches apart from the middle dot, with 2 little dots by the big one on the 2 on the outside. They were 2 millimeters, and then 1 next to the center puncture, and it was 3 millimeters. And you could lay a straight edge on them, and it was perfectly straight.
Wow. But there's no memories attached. You don't have any memories after that happened. You can't attach anything to those scars whatsoever.
No, not to those. I've seen them 3 times. I saw them in 1955. I saw 3 grays and Captain Hook, but it was probably a mantis. And then in 2009, I saw 3 grays and a mantis wearing a robe. Okay. And in here on March 8th, I saw 3 beings. It's an interesting story. I'll just go ahead and tell it.
Sure.
I had laid down to meditate, and I had decided to meditate. I've got to jump back. A psychic told me that my soul is from another dimension, and that I came here to do a job, which was probably writing this book, that I was born a human. I am a human, but she said that my body or my focal point or whatever in this other dimension is still alive. So I didn't die to come here. And I lay down to meditate on this. I had thought about it for a year, and I had thought she was nuts on that one point, except that after everything she told me had come true, I decided I would try and figure this out. Well, I meditated on it until I felt it to be true emotionally and intellectually. And at that point, what seemed like 2 fingers, and they weren't fingers, but whatever they were, reached in to the back of my head, just above my neck, where the spine joins to the skull, and grabbed hold of me and pulled me out of my body, leaving my ego behind. And my ego was saying it wanted to go. And I said, well, you're not going to get to. I didn't want to waste time. And then suddenly I was out of my body, which is, for me, it's one of the most wonderful feelings I've ever had, because all of my hang-ups, problems, they're all gone. They've stayed in my body. I've been out about 3 or 4 times. But anyway, there was a wind. It felt like a wind of love blowing everywhere. And everything was sort of black, but the shapes were made out of light, like they were tubes of light, but they weren't tubes of anything. They were light, just tightly bound. And these 3 beings were sitting in these huge chairs, and they looked human, but they looked like they were made of light and glass at the same time. And one of them, and the thought occurred to me that they were the Council of 3, whatever that meant, and I think it meant something to do with their people. And I could tell that one of them, the one that talked to me psychically, was talking for all of them. And he said, and they were sitting in front of this wall that seemed to go on forever, infinitely. And it was a blackish color, but it wasn't like it was solid. And it was outlined with these geometric patterns all over it as if it were made of tiles of some sort, where he said, "We've been waiting for you to figure this out, and we're very proud of you." And then all this information started pouring into my head so fast. It was like the way it sounds when you used to hook up to dial-up and it would make all that screaming and everything. It felt like that, even though it wasn't making that noise. And I could catch glimpses of something, but then there was just more and more and more. And then it stopped, and I was going through the air, moving back towards my body. I could tell I was heading for my body, and this other thing, which I could see it looked like a cookie cutout of me, life size, made out of fog or plasma, and it was about 4 inches thick. And I and it joined together and slid into my body, and I was wide awake. Now, before that, I could not tell. I didn't even know my body existed at that, while this was all going on. I had no connection to it at all. And I talked to the psychic. Her name's Carol Clark, and she's in England. And she told me that they had put a part of my higher self that had been left behind that I had not been given before because I was going to need it for the work I was going to be doing. And one of the changes it made was where I could talk to people because I was very reclusive and very shy. I didn't talk to anybody. This weekend, I did a presentation for Daryl Sims at HUFI in Houston, and it was only 25 people, but it was a fantastic experience. I loved it, and everybody seemed to like me, and they talked to me and asked me questions, all that kind of stuff. And we were supposed to be through at 8, and we stayed there till 8:45. So anyway, that's just one of the changes.
Excellent.
Also, I got where I liked many more different kinds of music than I ever had before. It was like, well, every like and dislike that we have is a small part of our ego. It's all likes and dislikes are tied up in our ego. And it was like these were just somehow done away with. I liked almost everything. So
great. So this experience was expansive for you. You were growing and evolving in many ways.
Yes. And I also got where I could, when listening to a person talk, I could tell more about what they were saying from their tone of voice and from their way they said their words than I could from what they were saying. In fact, sometimes I can tell that they don't even mean what they're saying. They mean just the opposite. So it was a strange experience, but it increases my ability to communicate with people.
That's amazing. Yeah, I could tell you have some type of other sense. And I was going to ask you about the type of aliens that you had seen because you had went into grays, and then when I was had those dreams, that's what I saw, and it's kind of strange because like I saw like a pack of 3 of them, and you said there was 3 of them, and I was, that's kind of weird, that there's 3 of them.
Yes. The first I saw the 3 grays, and it was interesting, and I was in my bed. My mom had left. This was the 3rd day, and they came back. They had never come back. They didn't come back the first 2 days. Well, they were back, and there was this guy sort of in the periphery of the room, and he was about 7 feet tall, and he was wearing a big, wide pirate's cap, which now I realize is the big, wide mantis head, but it was an illusion he was projecting into me. He was affecting my perceptions. He had a pirate shirt with puffy sleeves and a black vest that fanned out, which was probably his robe. I couldn't really see his legs. And he started dancing around in a really weird way, throwing his elbows up in angles. Of course, he probably wasn't really dancing, but he looked like Captain Hook from Peter Pan by Walt Disney that had come out a year or so before that. And I had a book about it, too. I loved pirates for many years while I was a child. Well, the room suddenly got bigger. I don't know how. The room was bigger. And my bed, it was like it was rotating slowly in the center of the room. And the 3 grays, though, were always on the edge, and I could not move. And I thought I was tied up, and I was starting to get scared about that. And I looked over at my wrists, and they weren't tied. I just couldn't move. But before I got really panicked, the room went back to normal, and they were gone. I pulled the blanket over my head, and I went to sleep. And I've pulled a blanket over my head ever since because it was so confusing.
I do that,
I thought,
too. The blanket over the head, yes.
Uh-huh. And a pillow, too. Because I thought if they're going to come back, I just don't want to see them. So that was how that episode ended. Now, in 2009, this was about a week or two. If I mention dates and they don't match the ones in the book are the ones that are correct. So anyway, about a week or two, I started walking every day. I thought about this, and I thought, these guys can come in my house any time they want to. They can do anything they want to me. I mean, my first wife used to go, you hurt yourself while you're asleep more than any person I've ever heard of, because I would wake up with big bruises and punctures and all kinds of stuff. And we'd know we hadn't done anything to cause it the day before. Well,
wow.
So I thought, they're taking something from me, or they're putting something in me, or they're doing experiments. And I later decided it was not experiments, because in an experiment you don't know what the outcome is. They are doing procedures, and they know what they are. So I said, this is, to myself, of course, I said, this has got to be a reciprocal relationship somehow. So I went out in the backyard, and I live on 2 acres of woods, and I've got an electric line that runs down the middle, and it's got a cleared easement. I walked back and forth under that line for 6 to 8 hours a day for 5 days. And I said, first few days I said, am I crazy? Are you really doing stuff to me? What is going on? And I was really worried about being insane. You know, I didn't feel insane. So then I changed it, and I said, I finally got it down to, I want to know what you're doing. And I said that over and over again. And I thought maybe I'd get some kind of answer just to shut me up, because I was really manic about it on purpose. Well, at the end of that week, I was playing some music at the Country Kitchen, which was a little restaurant near my house. And I had not played since I was like 17. Well, I got in there, and the first song went okay. Then the second song, the words just started disappearing out of my head before I could sing them. And I made up 3/4 of the words to every one of those songs. And I was shaking inside, though nobody could tell, thank goodness. And if I hadn't had these 2 big speaker stacks and amplifiers with me, I would have just run out of there. But I had to stay. And a man came up during a break, and he said, look, I'm going to help you. I play guitar. You get your words to your songs out of your guitar case. And he said, I know them all. And I'll play and you sing. And you just look at me. So actually they could tell I was nervous. And so we did that, and it worked really good. And everybody started applauding and all this kind of stuff. And there were about 15, 20 people in there. Well, the last song I played was Hey, Mr. Spaceman by the Byrds. And Frank, the person I talked about before, he was there because I needed someone to help me move all this equipment. And he thought it was very interesting that I sang that song last because of what I'm going to relate next. Got home, tried to go to sleep. It was 11. I couldn't get to sleep, so I decided to meditate. And let me get it straight in my head. I meditate to a CD that entrains your brain. Well, I got pretty relaxed, and then all of a sudden I couldn't tell if I was breathing or not, and I couldn't tell if my heart was beating or not, and I came up in my consciousness just a little till I felt my heart, and I knew I was breathing, and I felt like my body's taking care of itself. So I sank back in, and then I was laying in a hammock, and the hammock was hooked from side to side instead of end to end. And there were several blankets in it, and I looked at them a little bit because there was a dim light in the room, even though I could not tell where it was coming from. I fell to the blankets, and some of them were pretty worn with like holes in them, and one of them looked like a child's blanket with a little pattern of something on it, horses or flowers or something. And they were all sort of dirty. Well, it suddenly dawned on me I was on a spaceship. And I go, wow. I'm not going to say what I said, but I said, wow, I'm on a spaceship. And I grabbed hold of the each side and pulled myself out. And I didn't have any clothes on, just like when I went to bed. And everything looked sort of foggy. And at one point, I accidentally just reached up and touched my face, and I didn't have my glasses on. I never, I don't go to bed with my glasses on. In dreams, I always have my glasses on. I always have clear vision, and I always have clothes on, except for maybe one or two dreams way long ago. Well, it was very warm. The floor was comfortably warm. It wasn't hot. And I'm standing there looking around, and there's two other hammocks in the room besides mine. But nobody appeared to be in them. Then I hear light footsteps in whatever is on the other side of an open door to that room. And like I said, I looked around, and there were no light fixtures, but there was light coming from the top of the room somehow. It was almost like it was coming out of the air. Well, I thought to myself, I'm not ready to meet any aliens. And I started crawling back in that hammock, and I got about halfway in, and suddenly everything went black, and then it came back up. I was laying on a metal table, and there were 3 grays at the foot of the table, and there was a mantis. Well, now, I had never heard of a mantis. I had never seen of a mantis. All I knew existed were reptilians and grays, and mostly I just knew about the grays. I'd never seen a picture of a reptilian because I just didn't, I don't know why, but I just didn't want to look at anything. So this strange creature standing almost in the shadows but very clearly visible, I'm on this table, and I feel myself start to panic. And he says, "Do not be afraid." Now, he didn't say it with his voice. It was in my head, the same place I've heard a voice a couple of times. And I wasn't afraid. He had manipulated my nervous system and had made me calm. Then the picture shifts to black and white. It was like I was in my bed looking at it. I've talked to Daryl Sims about this. He said he believes it was a real event, and that he said they can make you see through their eyes or see whatever they want you to see. So suddenly it focused in on me like someone panning a camera in, and I could see myself from my neck down, laying on this table, to almost to my knees, which my feet were up on the edge of the table, and I couldn't see the grays. And then the picture immediately changed, and it was X-ray. And I wish the grays had been in there because I don't know what was in them. But then they did the anal probe. And then I was wide awake in my bed, and I felt fine. In fact, I was elated because I had been on a ship, because I had seen them, because I knew what they were doing to me. I wasn't too happy about that. But anyway, then I went right to sleep. Now, it always takes me an hour to go to sleep at least, no matter what. I have had insomnia since I was a child. I used to lay awake in bed till 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning and then have to get up at 6 to go to school, and I was exhausted most of the time. But I went right to sleep. The next morning, I woke up. I felt, before I went to sleep, I reached over and I drew a picture on a piece of paper I had by my bed of that being that I had seen, the 7-foot one. Well, okay, so I wake up, I'm really happy, and then I started crying. I didn't know why I was crying. I wasn't, the crying was not driven by thoughts. It's not like I thought anything sad. In fact, my thoughts were almost elated about my experience. So I cried, and I cried, and I couldn't stop. And I felt like somehow something was coming out of my brain and leaving me. And it was a negative thing or whatever, or, I don't know, a fear. But I cried for over 30 minutes, and then it finally died down. Then I cried for just a little bit more, and then it was gone. So, and I felt fine. I was tired from crying. Later that day, I went to a restaurant, and I hated broccoli. I hate all those kind of plants. Well, the taste of them. I could eat them. I thought they tasted good. I found myself really enjoying country music. But anyway, I went over to Frank's house before that happened, and I said, look, I told him what happened. And he's listening, and then I go, now, I drew this picture, and this is probably going to invalidate everything I've said because it's probably going to show that it was all my imagination. So he lays the picture out, turns around to the computer, and goes to a web page, and there is a drawing almost exactly like mine of a giant 7-foot-tall mantis wearing a robe that a child had drawn. So it didn't invalidate my experience at all. In fact, it validated my experience to see that.
No, I don't think it invalidates it at all.
Right. Now, if it hadn't existed, of course it could be that nobody had ever seen one before.
The thing is, when I saw the Greys in my dreams, I never had seen them before, like in science fiction or anything like that, but I did later. But when I saw these Greys in my dreams after I had the UFO experience and all that, I had never seen anything like that. Not that I remember, that's for sure.
Right. I had seen pictures of Greys before Frank had shown them to me. I would always fall asleep at his house while he was showing me some video about UFOs or any of that, or aliens. I would fall asleep. And that was weird. And he at one point commented, it's really strange that you fall asleep when I try to show you this stuff. It's almost like somebody's putting you to sleep.
It's interesting how you were saying you're you couldn't feel yourself breathing and whatnot. It's like they're getting you down to like a lower state of consciousness and whatnot. And it almost sounds like they're conducting some type of I don't know how to put it, but like when they do mind control, they give someone else a different personality by shocking their consciousness or whatever.
The first time that happened to me was in 1999, and I didn't know anything about aliens, but I came up with this idea that we could get out of the back of our heads and go into go to where dead people are, go to the other side. And I meditated on this day after day after day, and I would get really deep, but never anything like that. Well, one evening I was getting ready to go do that. I was standing at the head of my bed, and a voice, which was the exact same voice that I heard later several different times, spoke in the very center of my brain, just below the pineal gland, and it said, "You are going to be given the opportunity to die." I said, "What?" It's the weirdest thought I've ever had because for some reason I still thought this was my own thought.
What an
even
opportunity.
Though,
What a nice opportunity they've given you. Okay.
I think I want to pass on that one.
That's what I've been working on for a year, though, basically, but to die and come back. Well, it happened 3 nights in a row, the exact same thing, just that, nothing else. And each time I would think it was strange. On the 4th night, it didn't happen, and for some reason I did not think of it, which may be good or bad. I got into the bed, and this was the first time that suddenly, as I was meditating for about 20 minutes when I started losing contact with my heart and my breathing. And it was a very slow process, and I thought I was doing it myself. I woke up just enough to make sure I could breathe, and then I went ahead and relaxed, and I still was not thinking of what was said to me. All of a sudden, my body was just gone completely, and I felt these things leaving me, hang-ups, all kinds of baggage that we humans carry around. I felt it leaving me, and I could see it flowing off into the distance, but what I was really seeing was me becoming detached from my ego, and I became about the size of a pencil lead, the end of a pencil, and it was complete blackness. There were no phosphines. I couldn't see any specks of light or anything, just this complete blackness. And then suddenly a light, boom, was right beside me. Half of what I was seeing was black, and the other half was this light. But, of course, I didn't have any eyes, so I could look right at it, and it didn't blind me. And I thought, and I should have known what was going on, but I didn't. I said, I think I could move into this. I think if I just wanted to, I would move right in it. But what is it? I said, is this my higher self? What's going on? And I even thought, I wish I had a phone in here and I could call somebody. But I didn't. And then I go, I'm living 14 miles out of town. I would have to crawl. If I got out of this and was like sick or whatever, I would have to crawl to the phone. I might not make it, and I might not make it in time for an ambulance to get here. I'm not going to go. And this voice, it goes, you wanted this, and now that I give it to you, you're not going to go. And then it laughed 3 times. And the first time, the wall of light turned into a sphere, a large sphere, like those mirrored balls that you see in the garden, except it wasn't reflecting anything, and it was still bright light. And then with the second laugh, it got smaller. With the third laugh, it shrank down and disappeared, and I was wide awake. No transition from a deep state. I was just wide awake. I had a mentor at that time that was teaching me about, was guiding me in spiritual work, and he was a physicist, and he worked for a lab for the government that didn't exist. The lab didn't exist. The government did. But anyway, so he was in some kind of secret ops. He told me, you would have died. You did the right thing not going. You would have died. And I thought about that for years. And I'm going, why? Why would they go to all this trouble, take me there, and then let me die? And about a month ago, after the other experiences I've had, I realized I just wouldn't have wanted to come back. So I would have died. Because it was the most wonderful feeling. Even being still on this side of the light, it was the most wonderful feeling I'd ever had in my life.
That's amazing.
That's great. Do any of you have any? This is a good point to pause. Does anybody have any questions or comments about them?
Hey,
John,
Byron.
do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. This is Reverend John Polk. I'm curious if you've heard of my last name before, because my dad's entire family is from Lufkin, Texas.
Well, I've heard of Polk County.
Yeah, there's one here in Central Florida also, but anyway, my father's family, they're all from Lufkin, Texas, and my father went to college at Stephen F. Austin University in Nacogdoches. So I found that kind of interesting that you're from or live close to Nacogdoches.
Yeah, I'm 12 miles from it, or 13 or 14 miles from it.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, Nacogdoches is one of those East Texas towns that you wouldn't know about it unless you heard about it through somebody. But anyway, I've been going over to that part of East Texas my whole life because my family's from there. And have you ever heard of Etoile or the San Rayburn Dam and the San Rayburn Dam?
I've been to both those places.
You know what's interesting is my cousin. My grandfather died, my grandmother died, and then his father died. So now my cousin, who's 43 years old, he's running Polk Carpet and Polk Flooring in that part of East Texas. But when we were kids and we would go visit my grandmother, she lived on the San Rayburn Lake by the San Rayburn Dam in Etoile. And it was a magical, mysterious area because there used to be Indian reservations all through there. And
yes.
My cousin would go out and look for arrowheads, and he would basically get lost. He'd get lost in time going out by the lake looking for these arrowheads, and he had this gut instinct and he just knew how to find them. And he would find some that, to a collector they would be worth a lot of money, But I was curious if you knew anything about the Indian spiritual kind of climate that exists in that part of East Texas.
No. I know about the mound builders, and we have a street in Nacogdoches that was at one time solid. I mean, it had a lot of mounds. In fact, as people were building houses here in modern times, or since the 50s or 40s, they thought they were all gone. They'd be excavating to build a house, and they'd run across all this Indian stuff. And I have a friend that lives there on Mound Street, and every time I go, no matter what time of year, I will start freezing. After a very short amount of time, I have to get an extra shirt, a coat, and they're all sitting there in their short sleeves. And several people have told me that's a sign of spirits being around.
Oh, yeah, it happens to me all the time. My house is on an old Indian reservation. My house is totally haunted, and it can be very warm in here, and the temperature be cold in the house, or it can be very cold in here and the temperature very warm in the house. And often I'm the only one who's getting cold,
Right.
So I experience the same thing.
I have some orbs in my house from time to time.
Oh, me too. The last couple of guests that we've had on Aquarian were talking about how they saw orbs, beautiful orbs of different certain colors that would manifest into some kind of physical being. One of our last guests, he saw a female appear that looked like Jada Pinkett Smith. And then I'm serious. And then another guest saw somebody that manifested into some other beautiful angelic-looking person, and that is personally happening to me in my home. And I'm learning how to summon it to happen, and allowing and seeing how it can manifest into something that I'm comfortable and familiar and feel safe with. And if I don't feel that way, then I don't allow it to manifest in my house. But it does it with quite a great frequency. And the more that we talk to experiencers like yourself, it actually helps me unlock doors that I never knew existed, and I'm a lifelong experiencer myself also.
Well, I can only see mine on videotape, and I got two kittens almost 2 years ago, and they were running around the house, and I decided to tape them because they looked like a couple of race cars. I got them the day after they were weaned. They fit in my hand, and I can drop my cat, one of them, on his back, and he doesn't flinch because I trained him to do that. He trusts me that much. And anyway, these things, these glowing orbs were in these movies, And in one of them, the cats chase it. I saw them looking at things. Well, they would chase these things, and then once they figured out they couldn't catch them, they just gave up. But they would trace the lines around the panes of glass in my French doors. One of them came sweeping around the room as I was taping him and stopped in the air about 6 inches from the camera, and then he zooms around me. I'm sure he could have gone through me because they went through that glass and everything, and they seemed to come in through the floor. As the cats got older, there were less and less of them, and now I still find them, but they were really fascinated by the kittens, and it may be because the kittens could see them. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My old roommate had a dog, and we could tell. I mean, my roommate couldn't see it, but I could see what his dog was barking at. But my roommate figured out that he was barking at ghosts in the house. You know, he wasn't just barking at thin air. You know, I mean, animals sense things that we can't. Right. You know, which is how they're maybe even more evolved than we are, if you want to think about it like that.
Oh, the animals develop completely. By the time they turn into adults, they are developed completely. Human beings develop half of the way, and then if they don't get on the path, they never develop the rest of the way. So,
yeah,
yes.
Good point.
Cats, dogs, all the animals, they're what they're supposed to be. They're fully developed.
I got 2 kittens at the same time too. They love it and they run around the house like crazy. But I had a pet fox when I was 16, a red fox, and
Wow.
she would jump at the air and snap at the air. So she was definitely seeing something. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in an 1840s farmhouse, and it was I'd say it was haunted, but it was also an interdimensional portal for extraterrestrials and other beings of different realms, because we were seeing all this stuff all the time. At least I was, and then I would bring in friends and girlfriends, and we'd sleep out in the backyard, and over time, everybody would see something. It was inevitable. They were going to see something, either a spacecraft or a ghost or some kind of being that they couldn't. Back in the 50s, we couldn't quite explain what it was, but now we have a framework of what's going on. Okay,
right.
Let's see. Just to let you know, I've lost total control of the board. My internet decided to go down mid-show. So we're just going to run until somehow we can shut off this program. I think it expires, but I have no way of clicking anybody on or off, or if anybody's calling in, I can't click you on. So just to let you know, we're broadcasting, but I've lost control of the board. I don't know what's going on.
I was
Neal,
at one
do you
radio.
have any questions or comments? Oh, go ahead.
I'm just like baffled. I mean, I could tell my little story where I walked the universe, but I don't know if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Sure.
One night, just like, how I was telling you, like they were like kind of stalking me and whatnot, and I was having all these different experiences and weird stuff happening that night, and, helicopters buzzing my place of living all the time, and jets, and you name it. And one night I was just having a dream, not that it has anything to do with them buzzing me, but that was happening quite a lot. And I had this dream where I'm really into, like, the movie The Matrix, and, that type of thing. I wrote my own theory on it that I called the procedure of thought, and of course, everyone's going to steal my theory now that I put it out, but I might as well just tell people. Because I believe it's something, natural, because it's something we should all be in tune with to tap into the universal powers, and it shouldn't be like an artificial construct, so to speak. But anyway, in this dream, I was given the ability to see all the universal knowledge, but I wasn't like, in the dream, I could just see like everything, every available knowledge that there is, everything, history and everything, and I could just travel through it, like time travel through it. But like when I woke up, I was like plopped back into the bed, it seemed like, and I was like in a sweat, and I had like heard this voice or just felt this communication. It wasn't really a voice, but it just like communicated to me that I wasn't ready, and it's like was gonna like bring me into this, and it kind of reminded me, and something like Byron said, I can't remember now, and earlier in the conversation that I think you were communicating like it was going to take you away to this other like dimension.
Yes. But that was my experience, that I was able to like see all the available knowledge that could possibly be available, and that's why I believe that everything we learn, everything that happens, every technology that is created has already been created before. Yes, I think so.
I agree too, and that's very similar to what has happened to me also, Neal. And we're both 46 years old, which I found interesting also.
Since I'm a lifelong experiencer and I'm, traveling through life and I'm now in my 60s, something weird is happening. Like every single night I'm having, maybe I'm like reading the Akashic Records, getting this information, this knowledge that is way over my little, Janet the human head, right? Are any of you experiencing the same thing? Last night I was getting this incredible download. It was combining information. I wish I could open my eyes or open my mouth and record it, because I'm getting all this stuff and it's so profound. And I'm like in my highest self and I know everything. It's like, can I take some of this back? Even if I can just take back, 0.5% of this information, I might be able to change the planet and it'll be conscious at last. But then when I wake up, it's like, oh no, it's gone. I can't quite get it. Where is that information? Because something always interferes. Anybody else having the same type thing going on?
One time, I had a ton of stuff pour into my head, and I could see it, and it was all about world finances, and right at the end, and it was coming in so fast. Once again, it was like a dial-up network. I couldn't grasp it all, and I saw pictures and all this stuff, and then at the end it said, the interest on borrowed money are the chains of slavery. And the next day I started working, and I worked for a year and got totally out of debt, because it just, I knew I had to get out of debt. But it was right. That is slavery.
I know all about that, by the way, but you guys don't want to get political.
Right.
Well, we'll do that on another show. We can do the political show, because I am investigating that. I've been contacted by the Red Dragon. I'm trying to get Benjamin Fulford. So contact me after the show. We'll create a show where we can focus on that. I don't really call that political, but I don't know what category that is. I just don't want to talk about Trump and Hillary unless it's about UFOs.
Yeah.
That's all my boundary is. Okay, so I'm pretty open. How about this? If we don't like it, we can go, give you the buzzer or something. And we can,
I agree.
Or we can just say switch subject. Okay, go for it. That was Neal? Is that Neal?
What?
That you have something that's political? Was that you, Neal, that said you have something political?
Oh, no, I was just saying I could explain the slavery part of money and why that is, but it would be political, I'm afraid.
Go ahead.
All right, I want to hear about the slavery part of money. If I get an overload or it's too much, I'm going to go, stop, time out. Go ahead.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, it has to do with the monetary policy that went back to 1694 with the Bank of England, and the Bank of England basically was corrupted by the original goldsmiths. The goldsmiths, the people that I guess you would say they were pretty much the first bankers, and the first bankers, what they would do is they would take people's gold and store it, and then these goldsmiths figured out that they could lend out more money, what they do is give people a note, and I don't understand it perfectly because I didn't live back then. I've just researched it, but they would give people a note that would deposit their gold, and then they would lend out the gold that they would have on hand to other people as notes, and then they figured out, well, they could just write as many notes as they wanted to, and that I know, and that became the basis of what they call fractional reserve banking, and they convinced the Bank of England to borrow money from them, and this was money that they didn't even have. So here you have, I know, it doesn't even make sense, and they do it, and they still do it today. And what they're doing is they're paying a private source interest, they got a government to pay interest on loans for basically wars. They, are creating wars, and to do a war, modern wars especially, they have to borrow more money, than they can possibly produce from resources and whatever. And that started basically the model of our Federal Reserve today is the model of that Bank of England, and that became the basis as well as for the Revolutionary War. The colonies trying to break free from England, and they say we won that war, but it's not really true because the basis of the war was that they wanted us to take on that Bank of England model, and after we supposedly won that war, there was another war, the War of 1812, and we won that one too, but the problem is it created so much debt. The United States, I guess you would call it the United States, I don't know if that's the correct term, was it the United States back then? I studied all this in a financial sense, but the United States decided to take on the Bank of England's model. They had already done it before 1812, but Jackson, is that the right? I think it was Jackson. Jackson was the one that killed the banks, right?
I think so.
Okay, well,
I think so, yeah.
Let me look on my wall real quick. Andrew Jackson, yep, it's Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson closed down the first Bank of the United States, which was that type of bank that you don't want to have where the government is borrowing money at interest, and then after 1812, then the United States went back to that, even after Jackson had gotten rid of that bank. Well, then you jump forward into 1913, that's when the Federal Reserve Bank was created, and that's, they put us on the path of the Bank of England, and without turning back. There was no turning back after that point, and you have World War I and World War II, and then you go forward. Basically how it works is the country with the most gold becomes the global reserve currency. That's the key word. So the England used to be the global reserve currency, and then there were some other ones that were considered the reserve currency, and you can even say that going all the way back to Rome, that Rome was the first global reserve currency because they exchanged money that was accepted all over, and they were had the most resources.
All roads lead to Rome. All roads back to Rome, and the Anunnaki for them. So I'm enjoying this. Go ahead. Thanks.
Okay, let me finish this. Okay, 1944, you have the Bretton Woods Agreement, and before Bretton Woods Agreement, though, in 1933, they outlawed gold. Okay, now. Everyone used to have, not everyone, but people used to have gold, and it was a method of regulating the banks. But then they outlawed gold and forced everyone to give all their gold to that Federal Reserve Bank that was created in 1913, which was created in a meeting called the Jekyll Island meeting. And in the Jekyll Island meeting, they had a secret meeting on Jekyll Island, which is near Florida, near Georgia. And all these elites met together, and they basically designed a system where 12 banks are making money on interest. Okay, So you have a government that is borrowing money, but is borrowing money from who? Nobody knows. Well, it's from those 12 banks like J.P. Morgan and whatnot. And in 1944, there was the Bretton Woods meeting, which decided that the United States would be the global reserve currency because the United States ended up with the most gold because it took everyone's gold, plus the United States acquired gold from World War II. But then in Vietnam, there was too much debt, so Nixon declared what's called a force majeure, which is just a fancy term for a default on the debt. Well, the United States was in big trouble then, so now we're in the point at the same time that they removed the gold standard. And technically, that was actually done in 1933, but I guess it was 1973 that they removed the gold standard officially. I don't know, my dates might be wrong. You could double check it. But they also, after the gold standard was removed, here's where we are now. They invented the petrodollar, which means every dollar that every oil transaction is sold in U.S. dollars, and it's creating all these artificial U.S. dollars in creation all around the world. And that was created at the same time that the gold standard was removed. And it doesn't make any sense because you have another country like Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East that are backing the United States currency with their resources. So when that goes, then there's going to be a massive financial collapse. I'm done. That's all I wanted to get out.
Fun.
But that's what it is. Borrowing interest.
What about all this money going to China? I keep hearing things about it's all going to China, and there's the Red Dragon, the ambassador, and Benjamin Fulford, and we're off topic, but it's interesting.
They're trying to be the global reserve currency because if you watch their transactions, they're accumulating all kinds of gold.
Yeah.
And is the U.S. just shipping it? Is Fort Knox empty, or the whole 911 thing, and they were transporting gold then? Is there some kind of global elite power structure that they're deciding it, and we're just little pawns in the game? And this shift, which occurs periodically from Rome to the Bank of England to these artificial wars, which keep things inflated and backed, and this whole anyway. I'm I get an overall picture as part of my download, and I have this understanding, but then I can't quite translate it and explain it. I just kind of have this understanding, and it goes back to the Anunnaki and Nanar who created the debt slavery.
Well,
and there's something about Saint Germain. Go ahead, something else.
Oh, I'm sorry. The key issue is that private banks are controlling the governments. The governments shouldn't be borrowing money from private banks at interest. It doesn't make any sense because these governments can never pay back those debts. So that means the private banks control everything.
And we pay them to print the money as well. Now, I remember a story about a year ago. We borrowed money from them, and they messed up, and the printing didn't work on like thousands of these dollars, and we had to pay to reprint them. If somebody doesn't give me the product, I'm not giving them any money. But that's pretty crooked. It's all crooked to start with. That was even worse.
Yeah, those are the two things you want to remember. Is the private banks control the governments by the government has to pay them the debt at interest, which can never be repaid and it doesn't even make any sense because they're not borrowing anything from these banks, but the right for the money to be created, which the government could do itself and not owe any interest. And then you have the petrodollar, which is you have all these extra dollars being put in circulation, and if that collapses, then everything goes.
Well, didn't Lincoln and Kennedy both try to get us free of those banks?
Oh, yeah.
And
JFK,
they died.
JFK passed an executive order, and also, yes, Lincoln he made it so the United States created his own money, and they sure didn't like that.
Really? I've often wished that aliens...
Yeah. Let's bring back to the aliens, because in your research, have you tied it back to the extraterrestrials, and if so, which species are the ones that are behind this? And anybody want to comment on that? I'm getting a rainstorm. Okay, somebody else.
As far as financially, but what about the black budget? Where's that money going to? Maybe that's going to some alien project.
Oh yeah. I wish that the aliens were interested in money, because they would be the best medical system and the best transportation system that we could ever have.
I agree. I have been on board ships many times, and it's instant teleportation. I have to go to Toronto from Maui, and I'm plotting that trip. It's like, oh my God, it's gonna take 12, 14 hours just to get from one side of the planet. Wouldn't you just love it if you could just step in the teleporter? But people like Andrew Bashago and other whistleblowers come on and say we already have all this technology, and whoever is the government, they're crooked, they're evil, they're wicked, they're holding all these technologies from us. So, the only way to get from here to there is plane, train, boat, car, and those technologies are well over 100 years old now. We have ancient, antiquated technology systems, and they're keeping the new technologies from us, so we can grasp as a species and join the Federation, become an advanced species. Somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the technology would change everything around, because everything we do is based on energy. A good percentage of what people work for goes towards energy to transport stuff, to make the products, and it's almost endless the amount of energy that is actually wasted, because the technology is so inefficient. We're using the old world technology still, and you have all kinds of great technology going back 100 years with Tesla technology that has been buried.
Right. And the ships obviously have their own generators of the energy. So we would all have free energy if they would just say what was going on.
Oh, it's definitely possible, because every I think I read on Wikipedia and other sources that I think it's a 1 hour of sunlight that actually hits the Earth is enough to power the total world's power demand for a certain amount of time. Okay, 1 day of sunlight, the surface energy that hits the Earth is enough to power the entire Earth for 1 year, if it was harnessed.
Wow! I'm not surprised.
So the potential is there.
It's all part of the slave system to keep humanity enslaved. That's what I'm hoping. They're certainly not going to reveal it to us from the top down, and I think that's why they're contacting us. We the experiencers individually. And it's our duty and responsibility to do things like these radio shows, and put the pieces together, connect the dots, so at some point it'll go from, just being this kind of secretive thing behind doors with the abductees and experiencers to the reality that we're, the new operating system that humanity has, and we can move from the level 0 civilization to, level 1 or more, and join the Federation. There's people that criticize me and say, well, humanity couldn't take it. And I beg to differ. Not ever chance-wise. We'll get over it. We'll rapidly join the Federation, start going to, the equivalent of Starfleet, and start being citizens of the stars, just like everybody else. That's my opinion.
Well,
yes.
Oh, well, I love the words. I love the words you're using. Different levels of civilization, as Michio Kaku, I guess his name is, the Japanese physicist.
Right, that's Michio Kaku. I saw him in person in New York. I think it was around 1999 or 2000 when he used that term, and I went, wow, that's And also, I studied with Gene Roddenberry for years. I started with his group when I was 12 years old in 1966. So I'm trying to use that terminology. That's what I'm used to.
Well, I felt that was my mission after I saw the UFO. That I started studying Tesla stuff, and I developed this so-called Tesla generator that used a collector to collect the electrons, and I have a different philosophy on how electrons and I'm not even sure if I'm using the words correct, which makes me look like an idiot, but I get photons and protons confused. So, okay, photons. I have a different philosophy for photons, and that is totally different from what they have in the books. And I'm interested in creating a corporation to create some type of free energy devices, and I have various devices that I've thought about. I used to write them down. I haven't been writing them down later, but one of them is to make a more advanced gasifier. A gasifier makes energy from gasification, a process of burning, say, like wood or other material in an oxygen-free environment. But the problem is they have them, but the design goes back to like Adolf Hitler, and after Nazi Germany was conquered, they really have done nothing to make the gasifier a better device, and it's kind of a shame because there's so many technologies that have gotten buried, but yet they develop stuff like, the stealth bomber and things for war, and we could, very well have free energy by now if the government would get behind this.
In the 70s, on David Letterman, a man had a Corvette rigged up with this this thing that had coils and coils of wires, and it would rotate them through a magnetic field, which would drive the electricity through the wires, and it was powered by a flashlight battery, and it had because it moved very slowly, but there was so much wire and everything, it didn't matter. It had enough energy to drive the car across the stage and to recharge the battery, and he did it on TV. The United States Patent Office would not give him a patent because they said it could not work.
They just didn't want that technology to get out there. And that's, if you read this, there's a couple autobiographies of Tesla. Poor Tesla, every time he created something, they voted him down in favor of, Edison. So he was battling it his entire lifetime.
Yeah. And
that keeps going on. I've seen so many free energy systems and inventors, they get bought out or they get threatened. If I lose power here, you guys carry on without me. We're having a torrential downpour and a thunderstorm. So just to let you know, I may disappear if our electricity, it's famous in Maui for our electricity to go out. So anyway, just carry on without me till the end of the show.
Yeah, I would like to talk more about aliens and stuff, but it's kind of like hard for me to do because it's not like a really well accepted topic, and I've had these experiences, and just like talking to them, people like when you're talking to them, they just seems like they just like distance themselves, and they're like way in the back of the corner, and you're just like talking to yourself.
I kept silent until just recently, and I realized since I was publishing a book, it was going to sit in the boxes if I didn't talk about it. And pretty much now I tell almost anybody, and I usually tell them, they'll ask me what I do, and I'll tell them I'm a writer, and I'll tell them the title of my book, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee, and I will have told them it's nonfiction. And they'll just suddenly stop because they'll realize what I've just said. And they ask me questions, and they're very interested, especially people in their 20s. But I haven't had any ridicule. I haven't had any of the problems that I expected. Now, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have had a lot of problems. But things have just changed over the last 2 years, in my opinion.
a
great deal.
Yeah, the youth are definitely coming around. That's the great part. I have a nephew that likes to talk about it all the time, and younger people are more open about it. But yeah, it's for me, it's kind of like ruined my life, because it's like something that happened and continues to happen, but I can't really talk about it to anyone, because they think you're crazy. No matter how much proof there is, they could stand there and see it with you practically, and they still wouldn't get it.
Yep, and that's true. I think I'm lucky that a lot of the people got to know me before I was talking about anything, and so everybody's been real supportive. It's interesting. I've had a good time. Used to, the only people I would tell would be strangers that I'd meet in grocery store lines and stuff like that. I'd end up telling somebody a story about this, and I'm sure they probably thought I was crazy, but they were entertained for a little while.
Yeah, I do actually openly talk to people in public, but I do notice that I'll shut my conversation off pretty short if they're not receptive of it. In the past, I would maybe talk through them and not acknowledge that they didn't want to hear it. So some people, they kind of do talk about it, but if they don't really ask me questions, I don't continue to talk about it very much.
And I post openly about it on Facebook as well as in closed groups, but I post openly. In 1961, I was 11 years old, and I was in school. I was in music class, and there were probably about 20 people in that class. Well, our teacher was ill one day, and we had a substitute teacher. This was a woman I had never seen before, and Seagoville was not that big a town. She was young. She had very pale skin, had beautiful blue eyes, if I remember right, and dark hair. And she decided that it was warm that day. Winter was going away. We were heading towards spring, and she decided that we were going to go outside and do calisthenics. Now, none of us wanted to go do calisthenics. We were in choir or this music class because we were going to join band, and we didn't want to take PE. Not that we were all slugs, but that's just the way it was. Well, she took us outside by the building, and we were on this gravel area, and she lined us up 5 across, 4 rows, had us hold our hands out, and then step away from each other where we wouldn't hit each other. And she had us do side straddle hops. And I can even still now remember the gravel crunching as I'm jumping there. And all of a sudden, the whole class just stopped. And she's standing in front of us under a huge oak tree. And this thing starts coming towards us over the oak tree. And I was really into models at that time. And 2 of my favorite models were the George Washington nuclear submarine and Battleship Missouri. Well, this looked like the George Washington nuclear submarine flipped upside down with the conning tower removed and the battle deck of the Battleship Missouri hooked to it. But the guns didn't have any cannons. They were all rooms. And there were round portals in these, although we couldn't see anything. And it was just coming across the tree, and then it was gone. And she said, that was nothing. Let's get back to work. And so we did about 3 side straddle hops, and the bell rang. Now, the class was an hour long. We had seemingly been out there about 15 minutes. Everybody quietly went back in. It was really strange. 11-year-olds, they wouldn't be quiet. We were all very quiet and orderly and went back into the building. And I never heard anything about it again from anyone. I told my mom about it, and she had no comment. And she hadn't heard anything on the news. Well, last year, the latter part of last year, I built a model of this ship, and I posted it on Facebook. And I've gotten in contact with a lot of students that I went to school with, and one of them told me that she said, I wasn't there. I had pneumonia that week, and that's probably why I remember it so clearly. But when I came back to school, several of my friends told me about seeing the ship.
Wow.
Now, I don't know who they were, and nobody else has ever said anything, but I thought that was neat.
That's awesome that you could reconstruct it, too.
Well, it was pretty easy since it was made out of those two models. Now, there is a possibility that it was actually a plain cigar-shaped craft, and they were reaching into my mind and giving me something that I knew, although I don't know why they didn't just make it a blimp, because I knew about blimps, and it was not a blimp. It was a submarine-shaped thing. And also, about a week after that woman talked to me about it, another woman who I did not know saw the picture and wrote on it and told me that a friend of hers had seen the picture too and had seen a ship like that in the air. So
wow.
He might have known. They might have done the same thing to him. It's hard to say. I also saw a ship disguised as a car. I was driving home from town, and I lived 14 miles from town, and at that time it took about 20 minutes to get to my house. Well, I turn onto the road that heads to my house, and I noticed this big green old Plymouth behind me. Now, this was probably in 1977 or 8, but the Plymouth was a few years older than that. It wasn't new. I start feeling scared, and I didn't know why. Why would I be afraid of that car? But I was. And I'm looking in the mirror, just watching it, and suddenly it stops. It raises up on its back bumper in the middle of the road, or in the middle of the lane. It pivots to where the roof of the car and the hood are facing the road, and then it lays over onto the side of the road. I freaked out. I'm going, well, this just isn't possible, because the drive shaft had not somehow broken and turned the car or anything. Nothing had done that. I got home as fast as I could, which took about 3 minutes. And my wife goes, why are you late? Because it turns out I was 20 minutes or so late. She knew where I was going. We knew how long it would take. I said, I don't know, but listen to this. And she goes, why didn't you stop and help them? And I go, well, I got scared. And she goes, you ought to go check on them. So I get in the car. Another 3 minutes, and let's just say 7 minutes has passed. And I get to the spot. There's no car there. I pull over the side of the road. There's no glass. There's no signs of it, except that there are close to 20 pine trees that are all about tall, and they are bowed over away from the road, perfectly bowed over, like somebody had pushed something on them and pushed them over. And they stayed that way. They never straightened up. They eventually got cut down by whoever owned that property. So the car was gone. It would have taken 20 minutes. Well, first off, they would have had to walk 2 miles to the nearest phone, call a wrecker in town, and wait for that wrecker to get there, which would have taken 20 or 30 minutes. No, it hadn't happened. It had taken me about 6 to 8 minutes to get back. To go and get back to that car where it was supposed to be. And the next day, I asked the guy at the little country store if somebody had a wreck. And he said, no, there's not been any wrecks out here. And where I live, he would have known, because he's like the hub of gossip or news, whatever you want to call it. So that wasn't a car. It was a ship. It was obvious that it had bent those trees over with the edge of it.
Do you think like were the trees actually touched by the object, or was it just some type of force that did it?
I don't know. It's odd because they were not broken. of course, pine trees are supple, but I've got a feeling if you bent even a 15-foot pine tree over to the ground, it would snap.
Oh, for sure.
It reminds me of the crop circles now that I think about it, the way the straw is not broken or anything, but yet it's laid down flat and bent in perfect designs. So that's entirely possible. Another ship that I saw, I was very fond of the Blue Angels, but not fond enough to realize that they were Navy airplanes. I thought they were U.S. Air Force. And I was out at a pond, a little lake that you could go to where I lived when you lived around here. And I was standing on the bank, and I heard a jet screaming. Now, the lake was surrounded on three sides by tall pine trees. And a Blue Angel, it's hard to miss, a blue and yellow airplane, comes streaking across there. And when it gets in front of me, it's like something in slow motion where it's going really fast, but it's moving slowly in a movie. And I could see all the markings on the side of that plane, and it was Air Force. And I could see the pilot, and he turned, and he had a helmet and a black mask, the black face plate that covered his face. But he looked down, and he's not even 45 feet above the ground now. He looked straight at me, and then, boom, the thing's gone. So I went and told a friend of mine about that, and he goes, "Oh, you're lying." I said, "What?" And he goes, "Blue Angels, A, they don't come over Nacogdoches. B, they fly in a group." And it was just last year, I looked at a picture of one, and I go, well, I'll be damned. They're Navy planes. So they knew I thought they were an Air Force plane, and they made it look like an Air Force plane. I mean, they put the Air Force emblem on it instead of the Navy emblem.
Yeah, this stuff is freaking me out because it's like seems like we have this technology, but chronologically it doesn't make any sense with our timeline of technical evolution, so to speak.
Yes,
unless we're seeing these are actual aliens, but it seems like the government has their hands on this stuff as well, military.
Well, the way this was moving, it had to be an alien ship, and they were giving me a screen memory. Probably the minute that thing appeared, I was probably taken, and this memory, it seemed real. I've seen a mule deer in East Texas who stood in the middle of the road and just stared at me and then walked off. There are no mule deer in East Texas. They're only in Central Texas and other parts, but not here. And I talked to a bunch of deer hunters about it when it happened. And they're huge. They're the size of a horse or a mule. I saw two. This was in 2000, and this is before I knew about the aliens at all. I saw two birds out in the woods. I was at a party, and for some reason, I just wandered away from everybody. I hear this noise, and I go over there to where the noise is, real smart. And they're the two of the strangest birds I had ever seen in my life. They had long, thin legs. They were like these balls of brown, puffy feathers, and then they had a real long beak. Well, when I started working on my book the first time, it was in 2009, I was looking at something, and I ended up on this page, and it shows these newly discovered species of brown kiwis that they hadn't even known about them for about a year. Well, I had seen them almost 10 years prior in East Texas in the woods, so that's so strange. It's like they knew I was going to find that picture. So they were showing me then something that had not even been discovered or acknowledged. And I think these things can see our future. I think they can see our entire life.
Here's one that happened to me. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, next. Go ahead. That's okay. I was going to say something, but you go next.
Well, I hate to push people aside, but okay. I was in San Jose, and I think this was before I saw the UFO, my first, actual UFO experience. But, technically when I had dreams that like I was with aliens when I was a baby is what they showed me. And then I recalled that memory of the three grays that were outside my window, and one turned and waved to me. It was like a female, and she had really big eyes. And but
I think they use three memories. Continue your story. Go ahead.
I was going to tell, but my story isn't about the grays, but I knew people that worked at IBM that were pretty high up. Because I went to school with their children, and I won't mention their names, but that I almost got a job at IBM where I lived in San Jose, California, and there used to be like a hidden IBM plant on the top of the hill, and I used to be a bike rider, off-road mountain biker, and I was sometimes able to drive onto the complex, ride with other people that worked there because they knew me, and I would ride through, and I was just like treated as one of them. But when they weren't around, there was a back way to go, so I decided to go the back way, which I wasn't supposed to do, and IBM doesn't like that because it's part of their property. And I'm riding along on my mountain bike, and this fly-sized thing comes and hovers around me and starts messing with me. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And all of a sudden it just starts hitting me in the eye. And I was like, oh, this bug is attacking me, and hit me in the eye. And maybe this is explainable, but okay, I grabbed this damn thing, and I'm a pretty strong guy, and I just squeezed the hell out of it with all my force and then threw it down to the ground. And when I threw it, the thing never died. It was still like moving, and then it flew back up, and it kept doing it again and messing with me. And then it was like when I squeezed it, it wasn't like an insect. It was like rubbery. And I'm like wondering if it was.
That's probably an early little drone. When I was a little girl in the 50s, I got hit by what I called a bee. And it delivered a needle, which they took me on board ship, and then they gave me an implant, one behind my right ear and another was up my nose. I think they were two separate incidences. So fast forward, and I meet Bud Hopkins, and I'm talking to him, and I had read his book, and in his book it said that, or it might have been the Betty Andreasson story. I get the two confused, but somebody was talking about the bee, that the little girl thought it was a bee. And I ran into my house, and I said, Mommy, a bee stung me. And it completely knocked me out. So I think they've had drones all along, and the little tiny insectoid-type drones are a very common way to, they can come in your house, they can be the fly on the wall, literally, and just do whatever they want.
Well, I thought definitely that it was like an insect drone, and then they came out with these just like recently, and I have told this story to people before they came out with it, and I was like telling my friend who lives a couple doors down, I said, see, that's what I saw. They do have drones, and I think IBM also has something to do with it, and I saw it on one of their, like, it's kind of like a secret plant on the top of the hill. In San Jose, California. It's I would say west of San Jose, up in the mountains. They have a plant up there that nobody can go in that plant, and you can't go on an IBM plant anyway. They're all restrictive and whatnot. But yeah.
Wouldn't it be great to have those little guards for your property? You can't come on, you get hit in the eye with a little bee drone or whatever that is. I mean, that's a perfect guard. Yeah. Don't need dogs.
I have like I have like another sense, and when it was happening, I felt like there was someone behind it, controlling it and laughing at me. And I was like, it's probably those guys. They have some secret technology, and they're just laughing laughing their tail off at me while I'm about to fall off my bike crossing illegally across their property, which, IBM would take pretty seriously, but I could probably get away with it knowing the people that I knew back then.
Wow.
John, we haven't heard from you much. We got about 50 minutes left on the show, but John, what would you like to say? John must be taking a break. Okay, back to somebody else.
Hello? Nobody's talking.
Hello? Yeah,
Hello,
dead air.
somebody, take the mic, talk. Go ahead.
The dreaded dead air.
John to the dreaded air. I asked John his opinion, but I guess he's taking a break. So somebody else take the mic and make a comment. Thank you.
I have another UFO story that I could tell, and that was it must have been, this was back when I was driving a truck. I drove a truck between 2000 and 2005, and it must have been around that time because that's when I was making extra money, and I bought a telescope that you could actually videotape what you're recording, which was a pretty awesome item back then.
Wow.
And yeah, it's cool. And now they're easier to get now, and I was trying to figure out how to hook it up to my telescope, and I was sitting there watching the moon, and it was tracking the moon, and I was watching it on the TV screen, and I was watching it, and I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. There's like objects circling around this crater on the moon, and they're like in a formation, and one would go, they were all sitting around the top of this crater, and then one would poke inside the crater, just drop into the crater, and then another one would come from around the moon from space somewhere and would fill the spot, and they would repeat this pattern, and then one would come back out of the crater and then go back behind the moon and then shoot off. And I almost got this as evidence, but I couldn't figure out how to hook up the VCR to the TV and the telescope, and I was all reading the instructions, and I was at my mom's house, and Mom, wake up, there's UFOs on the moon, and she's just like, I'm asleep.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I was on my break from truck driving, and I was staying at my mom's house, and I was all I couldn't sleep, so I was out there messing with the telescope, and yeah, it must have been about, I would say about a dozen little UFOs that were sitting around the crater and just darting into the crater, and then one would leave, and it was like there's either a base on the moon or something must have crashed there and they're retrieving it, or they're moving out or something like that. They had a base and they're moving out or something. And I've talked to people about this, and I'm friends with a physicist named Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and I'm trying to get some information out of him about this because I think he might know about it.
Yeah.
We just covered that on, I was at the IUFO Congress in Scottsdale in February, and there were some Jose Escamilla films and other films covering, it was called Packing for Mars. They covered the moon. So apparently there's a huge mining operation. Besides ancient cities and modern cities, there's a huge mining operation there. So that sounds like the little, it might have been like the little supplies, ships and drones or whatever they are, bringing stuff in and out, taking stuff in and out. They say they do them in craters. They have a lot of the mining operations. Everything in the cities are inside of, hey, it might have been Amazon delivering products to people that lived inside the craters. The chemicals can do the drill. Something like that. Yeah. So
one of the ships I
that's
saw.
Out there. I think you definitely saw a real thing. Yeah.
I saw a ship the year the Chainsaw Massacre 2 came out. I don't remember what year that was right now, 84 or 85. I was on a date with this woman, and after we ate dinner, we drove out into the country, and it was in the summer, so it was still light. And we topped this hill in the car, and the moon is there just above us, and it's on fire. And we pass under the moon, which of course is impossible. We pass under the moon, and I'm sitting there going, what did I just see? And I'm wondering if I should say anything to her, and I decide to say something. And we both turned to each other at the same time and said, did you see that? And she described the same thing that I saw, the moon on fire. And I said, you want to turn around and go look for it? And she said, yeah. So we turned around, and it was just gone. I took her and dropped her off, and then I stopped by a little fast food place to get a hamburger, and the radio was playing, and it said, I was catching the tail end of this story, whatever it was, and it said, and a strange object was seen in the sky over Nacogdoches.
Oh, wow. So that's confirmed then for sure.
Uh-huh. So it was seen by more than just me and her. But it was weird. It looked like the moon, but it looked like it was on fire, and just covered in fire.
Well, one of the biggest sightings, we just got through the anniversary of the Phoenix Lights, which happened in March 13th of 1997, and, a good percentage of people in Phoenix saw a mother ship that flew over the city, and even the governor of the time, Fife Symington, seen it, and he said that it flew over the park that he was in. I remember him saying it, and that it was bigger than the block of the park that he was in. So it must have been
Wow.
pretty big, and he's a ex-Air Force guy, so that's really saying something when someone has experience. He's a ex-Air Force pilot, I believe. I believe he flew F-16s.
So we have about 10 minutes left. It'd be nice in the last 10 minutes if we could all kind of speculate on what's going on. We're seeing all this stuff. Try to give us an overview or summary. What do you think is going on? Is this aliens, government projects, a culmination of them? What's your agenda? Anybody have any thoughts on that in our last? We have 9 minutes.
It's aliens. Go ahead, Byron, or whoever wants to talk.
I was thinking most of it is aliens, but I wouldn't doubt that we have a ship. I mean, I believe we probably have a fleet behind the moon, like that guy that they're trying to extradite from England has said he found. I can't remember his name right now. But I don't know. They're not experimenting on us, like I said earlier. They know what they're doing, and they do the same things over and over again. I find the same bruises. I find the same sets of punctures. Sometimes they are more than others, and sometimes they're bigger, but they're obviously doing something Now, a friend of mine thinks that they're taking stem cells. She is a nurse, and she said if she takes the stem cells out of a person's bone, because they get it from the white corpuscles in the marrow, she said if she does it very slowly, that there are no problems, that there's no bleeding, nothing. But if she gets in a hurry, and I'm quoting her when she said, these guys are always in a hurry, it will form a round bruise under the skin because it will bleed internally, but most of the time no blood will come out through the hole. So there is a good, and another person told me that the woman that wrote the foreword to my book, she told me they were taking bone marrow, which is basically saying the same thing, except that she had honed it down to the stem cells. And it makes sense that they would use stem cells with all the biological work they do. Like, I had a puncture that I woke up with in my hand, and like somebody had stabbed a pencil into my hand, and there was blood on my bed, blood under my pillow. There was no trail of blood, so I realized whatever was done to me while I was in bed. That wound was completely healed in 6 hours.
Wow.
It did not. There was no trace of it. I could scratch my hand right there. There was no pain. It was just gone. And I've heard other people talk about having things heal very quickly.
Well, I know.
One day with my boyfriend. I woke up with my boyfriend, and there was blood from the head up by our pillows, and we threw the sheets off, and then all down to our feet on both sides of the bed. There wasn't a mark on either one of us. We were totally freaked out. And he just said, okay, well, we're going to take these sheets and start getting out the spray and wash and put them in the laundry, and we're never going to talk about this again. And I agreed.
Yep. Yep.
That was weird. I have no explanation. It happened. Okay, who was going to talk? John? Was that John or? We only have a couple. We have 6 more minutes. Somebody else take the mic.
I would like to talk a little bit more, but I forgot what I was going to say now. Believe it or not, but the timelines don't make sense. We're seeing all this stuff. There's no way we could possibly create stuff like what I seen in the early 90s was warp drive, and we have movies on that, which is interesting that we have movies and that I've seen it in person. So they're telling us, pretty much everything you've seen in Star Wars and Star Trek, it just might be real, but there's no way we could have possibly created that according to the timelines that we have. So there's definitely some interaction going on with the extraterrestrials or aliens or whatever you want to refer to them as.
Yes. Talking about, it's not warp drive, but 3 different times I have suddenly found myself driving either on a different road or in a different place on the road, like 6 miles further than where I was a moment before. And there was missing time during those events.
Wow.
I go into them in greater detail in my book, and I'm going to give my book a plug real quick. It's Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee. It's on Amazon.com in paperback and electronic book.
Well, I'm going to read it.
It's 441 pages, and people tell me they find it hard to put down. So I hope that's true.
Fascinating. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. Here's what we heard from. Give you a minute or two, then I'm going to go and see if I can close out the show so it doesn't run forever. Who didn't speak? Well, that was Neal. John, did you speak? John has a book too. What's your book? Maybe we lost John. John, are you still there? Did we lose you? Okay. Anyway,
I'm working on a book called Mars Gate.
Oh,
good
wonderful.
title.
My book is about time travel and interaction with aliens and whatnot. And it's about a war that happened between the Pleiadians and the Greys and civilization that used to be on Mars. And I'm still working on it and trying to get it published, but it's not ready yet. And it's science fiction. I'm not claiming this to be real, but I believe that some of it is real.
Well, the best way to publish books that we have found is just go on to CreateSpace, which is part of Amazon.com. And you can just put it in a Word format, which you can publish as a PDF and upload it, and off you go. It's not very complicated.
Yep. I figured I didn't have time to wait for a publisher to pick it up, so I did it myself.
You could wait forever for publishers.
It's supposedly better if you use a publisher, but there's nothing wrong with being a self-publisher either, though.
I agree.
Right. Okay, well, we're running out of time, so I'm going to see if I can close the show out before they kick us off. I want to thank everybody for coming on board our show today. Thank you, Neal and Byron and I think we lost John. He looks like he's been booted. And I'm lucky I'm still here to the end of the show. But the rain is over. And so tomorrow the sun will come out, and we're going to do another show on Cosmos Connection on Revolution Radio from 6 to 8 Eastern with my co-host on that show is Teresa J. Morse. So thank you, everybody, for coming. And
thank you.
Love and blessings and aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was awesome. It was nice to meet you, Byron. I enjoyed the conversation.
I enjoyed talking to all of you.
Nice
it was
to
great.
meet you all. Okay, we're out here. Aloha. I can't get the music to work, so good night, everybody. Love and blessings.
For 88 years, Ocean Spray has been the nation's leader of everything red cranberry. And now they're proud to announce new Ocean Spray Pink Cranberry Juice Cocktail, made from real pink cranberries. Wait, they've been harvesting them for 88 years? I've missed out on a lifetime of refreshing deliciousness?
Introducing new, light, and refreshing Ocean Spray Pink Cranberry Juice Cocktail. Now available at ShopRite.
Better late than never, right?